Alright, I did film a little bit before. I was showing you how to cut out this octopus. I didn't, this is my first video. Kinda did a little bit too much of the work and I wasn't recording it. But this is out of copper. I got it at a PMC supply in Kingston. I'm holding it like this. You shouldn't really, because it will bend your saw blade, but you know what, I'm very careful. I know how to kind of hold it. You'll start noticing as you get comfortable with the saw, you start getting more and more, you start cutting corners a little bit. They're not always safe, but you'll, not physically safe, I mean safe for your project to fail. But, you know, once you get comfortable enough with it, you get around it. So I'm piercing this out. I'm going to make a octopus pendant. And I'm just going to go through and show you how to saw. I got this saw blade, saw frame at PMC. I'll put the links in the, on the video. And you can also get one at Rio Grande, and I'm sure there's plenty of other companies, but I usually stick with them. Usually, there's different types of saw frames out now. This has always been the basic standard one that I've used. And we'll see how this turns out. And like I said, as my first video, I'm going to start uploading more and more. And copper is pretty flimsy, so when you're sawing, you just got to be really careful to hold it down. You know, watch your fingers, because the sucker is sharp, and when it cuts in, it really leaves a pretty nasty mess. So I'm going to sweat solder this onto another piece of copper. I don't know what this is, maybe 18 gauge, I'm not sure. But I'll keep going with it, and this might actually be 20 gauge, I don't know. And we'll see how this turns out. Let's just keep going with it. One thing is, another thing I don't know if I got on the before video was that when you're sawing, it's good to keep your arm as parallel with your shoulder as you can, so there's not so much a bending of your wrist and stuff like that, because your wrist naturally will go into a certain direction, and it's not always the one that you want, and it naturally does this. It does it when you're sanding, it does it when you're hammering, it does it when you're sawing. I actually learned that from shooting foul shots in high school. Keep your arm parallel with your shoulder and it'll be straighter every time. Well, same thing is with sawing. When you're sawing, if you're right-handed, get to the left. If you're left-handed, get to the little bit more to the right. And it just keeps your, you know, your alignment better. Of course, I'm not doing that. But that's because I want to keep the camera in focus as much as I can. Now it's going to get really flimsy, so you gotta watch those fingers. It's really flimsy, so you gotta really be ginger with it, because it'll flip up, it'll bend, and then it causes a kink in your piece. And once that thing starts to kink, it just becomes more of a flappy, like a hinge. And it'll just keep flapping. Kind of gets annoying after a while. See, that pulled up a little bit. Don't want that. But like I said, you just work with it gingerly. Watch your fingers. Try to keep it as pushed down as you can, and it'll stabilize it. And then just really easily, you have to realign your saw. Just pick it up and let the piece move on its own, and it'll usually move back into position and straighten out your saw blade. Like I said, always with time you start figuring these little things out, but a lot of it is patience. That's why it's hard for somebody like me with a lot of energy to be a jeweler. Alright. Another thing is you can actually saw right into your wood on the outside. You can see my drill holes and stuff. Remember that this thing is for you, and it's not here to look pretty. That's you saw into it, it actually will stabilize for such flimsy things as this copper, and like I said, it's there for you. It's not there to look pretty, so you can saw away at it, drill at it. When it's marred up too much, well, you get another one. Alright, see? Flipped up again. That's what you get for working with copper. It's flimsy. This is a size 3 blade, and I like to work with size 3 a lot because it just seems like it's big enough not to snap so easily, and it kind of goes a little bit faster. And then if I need to do something really intricate, I usually go to an 03, or basically size 3 below 0. And it's almost like using the very tip of a super sharp pencil. I don't know if I got this in this part of the video, but when you're sawing into, like, see that little crevice right there? Instead of coming in it from 2 different angles, it's always good to get your saw right in there, and just as wide as the saw is, it's just it's the length as well. So it's basically like wherever you can spin it is basically the same thing as the length. So if you can, so as you turn it, you just kind of go up and down and kind of turn it and let the saw do the work. It'll spin right on itself, so you won't make any more, you won't cut any further into your design. This is also, I guess because I didn't film the earlier part, I didn't have the camera on, but this is actually rubber cement holding paper onto it. And why you use this instead of Elmer's glue is because the rubber cement you can kind of, you know, peel off with your thumb, and it holds the paper on good enough. And it's supposed to be temporary. Most people want to put something on and think that glue is always supposed to hold something on for the rest of the time. There are glues that come in handy, especially with jewelry, that only hold something temporarily. To make sure other applications, like for instance, I'll glue little tiny pieces of lapidary work to chopsticks or toothpicks so I can hold them and kind of angle them and buff them and stuff. So it, you know, you learn as you go. Some people will have better techniques of doing stuff. Some people learned a bit better. Some people have a different tool they swear by. I'm trying to show you with what I have, and I often will try to show you how to get away with doing something without having to buy that extra tool. For instance, Rio Grande will sell you a pickling pot to pickle silver, and it's basically a $15 crock pot at Walmart. It's not, you just have to make sure that you have the temperature control, but I mean, it's the same thing. All right, back to this. Let's get this guy cut out. Like I said, it's getting a little flimsy again. And like I said, I'm putting my fingers in front of it, and you really shouldn't, especially when you're starting. The only reason why I do, and I probably said it a few times in this video, is I've been working with these saws for over 20 years, since I was kind of a kid. So I do know my way around them, but I also have marks to show where my mistakes were made. See that sucker on my thumb? It's never really healed. But you learn from your mistakes, and that's really, in my opinion, that's the only true way that you learn. You make a mistake, and because of the let's see, the consequences of your mistake will make it more, will make you remember it more, because you obviously don't want to run into trouble again. And eventually I'll have a camera set up right up above me so you can look right down. But like I said, this is my first video, and I want to get started in showing people what I do, because it's very lonely up in these things. It's pretty lonely being a jeweler, because I'm up here doing all this cool stuff and no one really knows about it. If you hear that, it's the train. I am right next to a train station. That's why my rent for my studio is so cheap. And I am up in lovely Kingston, New York. There's like a big, kind of like a movement happening here. Some people say it's gentrification, some people say it's this, some people say it's that. But what is happening is there's a lot of artists are moving into this area. Like this, where I'm in, was a textile mill, and basically I'm working in what was once a giant factory. And I do believe where I'm sitting, there was once giant sewing machines, rows of women. Generally, because back then everybody thought women were the ones that do all the sewing and stuff. Well, they also ran their little own union. So when things got them mad here, they would strike, and then people would lose money. So they had their own cafeteria downstairs. They had all kinds of cool stuff. So good for the women. There you go. Ta-da! Almost done. A little bit more to go. And those were getting really, really flimsy. And that's why I chose to do this, because I'm going to sweat solder this onto another piece. So, without further ado, keep going on this. And like I said, there's always going to be somebody who's going to say, well, you should do it like this. Well, you didn't do it like that. Well, usually those people aren't the ones making videos, and usually those are the people that aren't really making anything. Always remember that. Always got to remember who your critics are and where they're coming from. Are they always looking for something bad? Are they always trying to find fault with everything. And then when they do that, try to look at what they're doing. It's usually a reflection of their critiques. I mean, I just don't like critics anyway, but it's what it is. I went to art school. I got plenty of critics. And a lot of times I see them coming from almost like a not so good place. Kind of like I don't know, it always reminds me of like the tattletale in school when you're talking and the teacher leaves and, hey, that person was talking when you were done. It just reminds me of that type of person. Hey, you're not doing that right. Yeah, well, show me what you're doing. Got plenty of that in my life. We're almost done with this. As long as I don't cut my finger. And it's getting really flimsy because it is very thin and it is copper. If this was silver, it would be a little bit springier. And there, like I said, there's also spring hardened silver. And there could be even spring hardened copper. I just don't work with copper enough. But what I like about it is that it's cheap and you can solder it. As far as the people who wear it, they claim it's got healing properties. I do believe that to an extent. I have put on rings where the spiritual side comes out. It came out with lapis actually, where I put it on. And I kind of felt something a little weird. Like I knew, that it was in the, King Tutankhamun's sarcophagus was made out of lapis. So I kind of felt some sort of weird little, not a tingling, but I just knew something ancient and that the earth was valuable to the earth was on my finger. And I just kind of felt it like, wow. I still feel it when I put it on. And when I take it off, I feel like something's missing. Alright. This is the hardest part because it is so flimsy. But we're going to put a backing on this so it has a lot more support than this. Now, I'm not going to get this right on the line of the drawing because the paper is starting to come undone. But what I'm going to do is get this pretty close and then I'm going to draw on it with a permanent marker. Or I'll do it by eye, it depends. Alright. Alright, one little more trim up here. Like I said, this is really flimsy. Really flimsy. But I will persist to get this cut out. Now right now, that lube would actually be pretty alright to use for the saw blade. That's why it kind of catches like this, but I've never quite had to use it for silver. And I'm sure but you can see how it's kind of catching a little bit. Let's see. I'm gonna put a little bit of, I have a little bit of some sort of waxy stuff. Let me see if I can get this saw blade a little lubed up here. Going to now this is the very unofficial part, but I'm going to use some dreadlock locking cream to kind of lube it up. Definitely not something professional, but there's wax in it, and it's kind of like what a candle has, and I bet you it'll add just a little bit of slidiness to it. And then once it also builds up, the heat builds up. So once the heat builds up on the metal, the wax will start to get a little bit softer as well. But it's just such a little bitty sliver that I'm sawing. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go right into the wood, and this will kind of makes it a little bit more stable. Alright, and there it is. You can see it was bent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hammer this out, and it's going to pull a little bit better. See? Now, it's kind of like your little bit of, see what I made out of metal type thing. It's always like a little bit of a gift for the jeweler, pulling the paper off. Because then you actually go from realizing that it's you know, not just a drawing, it is actually metal. Because most of your work is actually done with a pencil. Tools of the common crow. And then, you know, you can rub your, rub the rubber cement off. I'm probably going to use some not denatured alcohol, some 90% rubbing alcohol. Always good to get that when you see it on sale. I seem to always have a use for it, no matter what. There's always something getting on my hands. There's always something, you know, I use a lot of computer screens around. Always good to keep it handy. And then there's other tricks when you're, I don't know, like for instance, I'll save like a lot of, whenever I eat at Taco Bell and they shove all those napkins in there that you just kind of pollute the earth, you don't even need them anymore. I'll usually just grab a hand, you know, when they put them in my to-go thing, or into my bag when I'm getting a takeout. I'll just keep the napkins and I'll put them aside instead of throwing them away. And I'll go and wash this off in the sink. There's a lot when you're keeping something, when you're about to solder something, you always want to keep it as clean as you can, because anytime you start contaminating one thing, it'll just keep contaminating a lot of things. Like, I mean, it just keeps building up and up and up, and then eventually things will start happening. Your stuff gets discolored, things just don't work right, and then it's like you start realizing that, you know, your tools are actually dirty. See this stuff, it just kind of pulls the rubber cement off a little bit. I'm gonna run this under some water with some soap, and I'll get on to making a backing for it, and we're gonna solder this to a plate. And what I also have is this. I got this from the back of a refrigerator at a place where I used to live, and we're gonna make an eyelet out of this to put at the top and run a cord through it. I don't know, like I said, I'm just doing something to show a piercing project, make something that I'm not used to making. Alrighty.